Mercy General Hospital, Chicago, 2:47 a.m. Daniel Cole owned 11 companies, 4 private jets, and a net worth that made financial news anchors stumble over the number. That night, standing outside room 412, with his hand pressed flat against a cold hospital wall, none of it mattered. Mr. Cole? The doctor's voice was gentle, the way voices get right before they deliver something that cannot be taken back. I need you to sit down. He didn't sit down. Billionaires don't sit down when someone tells them to. They negotiate, they write checks, they call in favors. But grief doesn't answer to a checkbook, and Daniel Cole was about to learn that lesson in the worst 30 seconds of his life. Elena is stable, the doctor said, but I'm sorry, she won't be able to carry a child again. Ever. Somewhere down the hallway, a vending machine hummed. A janitor's cart squeaked past. The world kept moving, like it hadn't just ended for the 2 people in room 412. Daniel walked in. Elena was staring at the ceiling, tubes in her arm, mascara dried in tracks down her cheeks. She didn't look at him. Say something, he whispered. She finally turned her head. What's the point of all your money, Daniel? She said. If it can't buy us the one thing we actually wanted? He had no answer. For the first time in 20 years, Daniel Cole was speechless. 3 years earlier, before the hospital, before the silence that grew between them like weeds in an untended garden, Daniel Cole had been a nobody from Gary, Indiana, who slept in his car for 4 months while building his first software company out of a laptop with a cracked screen. He met Elena at a diner where she worked double shifts to pay for night classes. She was the only person who ever told him no. No, she wouldn't go out with a guy who tipped in Monopoly money as a joke. No, she wouldn't be impressed by his stories until he actually did something with his life. So he did. 9 years later, his company went public. He walked into that same diner, now closed down and boarded up, and stood outside it with Elena, both of them in clothes worth more than the building itself, and he cried. Not because of the money, because she had believed in him before there was anything to believe in. They got married in a backyard with 50 guests and a homemade cake. They swore, even as the money multiplied, that they would never let it change who they were to each other. Then came the miscarriages. 3 of them, over 4 years. And then room 412. 6 months after the hospital, the Cole Mansion on Lakeshore Drive had never felt so enormous. 14 bedrooms, and Daniel and Elena barely occupied 2 of them. They ate breakfast in silence. Elena had stopped painting, a hobby she once loved. Daniel had thrown himself into work, flying to board meetings in London, Singapore, Dubai, anywhere that wasn't home, where the silence didn't feel like an accusation. His assistant, Priya, finally said what no one else dared to. Daniel, you built an empire so you'd never have to run from anything again, but you're running. He didn't answer her either. He just looked at his calendar, where a trip had been sitting untouched for weeks. Nairobi, Kenya. Cole Foundation Technology Center groundbreaking. His charitable foundation had committed $40 million to build a He didn't look up when they approached. He was too focused, tongue between his teeth, twisting 2 wires together with the concentration of a surgeon. This is Quito, Joseph said. He fixed the clinic's generator last year. Nobody taught him. He just understands machines. Quito finally looked up, and Daniel felt something shift in his chest, though he couldn't name it yet. The boy had sharp, curious eyes, the kind that missed nothing. Is it true, Quito asked, in careful English, that you build computers that talk? Daniel crouched down to his level. Something like that. You want to see one? He pulled a tablet from his bag, a prototype from his own company, worth more than most houses in the village, and handed it to the boy. Quito's hands trembled slightly as he took it, as if he understood, without being told, that he was holding something rare. Within 10 minutes, the boy had figured out 3 functions Daniel's own engineers had buried in the settings menu. Where are his parents? Elena asked Joseph quietly, watching Kito's face light up. Joseph's smile faded. His mother died giving birth to him. His father was killed in a Matatu accident 3 years ago. He lives with his grandmother, Amara. She raised 6 children of her own. Now she is raising her grandson alone, at 68 years old, on almost nothing. Elena watched Kito show Daniel how to draw on the tablet screen, his laughter ringing out across the schoolyard, and something long dormant stirred in her chest. Something that felt dangerously close to hope. Amara's home was a small structure of mud brick and a tin roof, spotless despite having almost nothing inside it. She served them tea with a dignity that made Daniel, a man who'd shaken hands with senators, feel oddly small. "My grandson," Amara said, watching Kito through the doorway as he showed the tablet to a group of awestruck friends. "He has a gift, but gifts need water to grow, and here we have only dust." "He's remarkable," Elena said. "He is my whole world," Amara replied simply. "I worry what becomes of him if I'm not here." She said it plainly, without self-pity, the way people speak when they have made peace with hard truths. But Daniel saw Elena's hand tighten around her teacup. That night, in their guest house, Elena couldn't sleep. "Daniel," she said into the darkness, "did you see his eyes when he understood that tablet? He's brilliant. He deserves a real chance, a real childhood." "We're building the center," Daniel said carefully. "That's the chance." "You know that's not what I mean." He did know, and it terrified him, because for the first time since room 412, he wanted something too. The groundbreaking ceremony happened 3 days later. Ribbon cutting, local officials, a crowd of 200 villagers, cameras from the foundation's PR team capturing Daniel Cole, shaking hands, and smiling for photographs that would run in American newspapers under headlines about corporate generosity. But Daniel wasn't thinking about headlines. He was thinking about Amara, who fainted during the ceremony from what the village clinic later diagnosed as advanced heart failure, a condition that, with proper care, was entirely treatable. Care that simply didn't exist within 100 miles of Kajiro. Daniel chartered a medical flight to Nairobi's best hospital within the hour. Money, for once, moved fast enough to matter. But when the cardiologist delivered his assessment, even Daniel's checkbook hit its limit. "Her heart is failing," the doctor said. "We can manage her comfort. But at her age, with this level of damage, there is no cure. Weeks, maybe a few months." Daniel stood in another hospital hallway, in another country, hearing nearly the same words he'd heard in Chicago. He thought of Elena in room 412, asking him what the point of his money was. He finally understood the answer wasn't zero. It just wasn't the answer he'd assumed it would be. Amara asked to speak with Elena, alone. Sitting up in her hospital bed, thinner than she'd been even a week earlier, she held Elena's hand with surprising strength. "You have no children," Amara said. It wasn't a question. Elena's eyes filled. "No, I can't." "I watched you with Kito," Amara said. "You look at him the way I looked at my own son, before he was taken from me." She paused, breathing carefully. "I am not asking you for anything, but I am telling you what I see. That boy needs a family who will love him even after I'm gone. And you need a boy who will teach you how to laugh again." "Amara, I couldn't possibly." "You could," Amara said firmly. "The question is whether you will let yourself." Elena walked out of that hospital room and found Daniel in the courtyard, staring at nothing. She sat beside him and for the first time in months took his hand without being asked. "I want to adopt Kito," she said. "Not out of pity, not for a photograph, because somewhere in that dusty schoolyard, I found something I thought I'd lost forever, Daniel. I found my heart again." Daniel looked at his wife, really looked at her, and saw the woman from the diner, the one who never let him settle for less than his best self. "Then let's bring him home," he said. The adoption process took 4 months of paperwork, home studies, court hearings in Nairobi, and long conversations with Keto himself, who was old enough to understand what was being asked of him and brave enough to say yes. Amara lived to see the final court hearing. Frail in a wheelchair, she sat in the front row of a small Nairobi courtroom as the judge finalized what she had set into motion. Afterward, she pulled Keto close. "You will go far from here," she told him in Swahili, Joseph translating quietly for Daniel and Elena. "But you will never stop being my grandson. Carry Kajira with you. Carry me with you." "I will, Bibi," Keto said, using the Swahili word for grandmother, his voice breaking. Amara passed away 6 weeks later, peacefully, in her own home, surrounded by the village that had raised her son and then raised her grandson. Daniel funded a permanent scholarship in her name at the Technology Center. Not for publicity this time, but because Elena asked him to, quietly. Without a single camera in the room, 1 year later, the Cole Mansion on Lakeshore Drive was loud for the first time in its history. Keto, now 12, had turned the East Wing into what he called his laboratory, full of half-disassembled electronics and diagrams taped to the walls. Elena was painting again, portraits of Kajiro, of Amara, of the schoolyard where everything had changed. Daniel had cut his travel schedule in half, choosing bedtime stories over board meetings whenever he could. One evening, Keto found Daniel in his home office, staring at old photographs from the trip. "Dad?" Keto said. The word still felt new in his mouth, and every time he used it, Daniel felt his chest tighten with something he could only describe as pure, uncomplicated gratitude. "Yeah, buddy?" Bibi Amara used to say gifts need water to grow. I think she meant more than just my gift for machines. He climbed into the chair across from Daniel's desk. I think she meant love. You and Mom were my water. Daniel thought back to room 412, to Elena's question that had haunted him for a year. What's the point of all your money if it can't buy us the one thing we actually wanted? He finally had his answer. The money hadn't bought them a child. It had simply built a bridge. One flight, one groundbreaking ceremony, one broken radio in a boy's careful hands, to the family that had been waiting for them all along, 7,000 miles from home. "Come here," Daniel said, and Keto hugged him the way children hug parents they trust completely. Outside, Elena stood in the doorway, watching the two of them, tears in her eyes. Not from grief this time, but from a joy she'd once feared she would never feel again. Some fortunes, she had learned, cannot be built. They can only be found. The end. If you like my video, please subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon for early notification for the new video, and also tell us in the comments which part you like the most. Also, share the video with your friends. Thanks for watching the video.